Hi, this is a Roleplay Class 1 Introduction, the first of a 7-week series. My name is Branwyn Emerald, and this class is written from my point of view. It does not reflect Ironhall as a whole. I am known as the Crone. I also am and have been the Jarl's Woman of Ironhall. I want to give you some background on myself as a role player. I started playing Dungeons & Dragons when I was 14. I'm now 45. I have done tabletop, online, and live-action roleplay for most of my life. I have owned and ran online role-playing games for the last 13 years with my real-life husband, Bane. This series of roleplay classes will focus on roleplay in general, not just Korean roleplay, though we will focus somewhat on gore. We will be talking about what roleplay is, common mistakes of new roleplayers, how to structure a scene, character development, living in the fictional world, building storylines with others, and those finishing touches. At the end of the class, we're going to talk about gore, as it is relevant to roleplay as a fictional world. While this is skewed to gore, it is true of any fictional world we play in, that part of being a good role player is knowing the fiction. Some of you may not like what I have to say, or even how I say it. At the end of the class, if something I have said made you think, even if you think you disagree with me, I have done something positive for our community of role players as a whole. Defining roleplay. From Wikipedia, a role-playing game is a game in which the participants assume the roles of characters and collaboratively create stories. Participants determine the actions of their characters based on their characterizations, and the actions succeed or fail according to a formal set of rules and guidelines. Within the rules, they may improvise freely. Their choices shape the direction and outcome of the games. There are different genres which one can choose while role-playing, including but not limited to fantasy, modern, medieval, steampunk, historical, etc. Books, movies, or games can be and often are used as a basis for role plays, which in some cases may be deemed collaborative fan fiction, with players either assuming the roles of established canon characters or using the players themselves to create original characters to replace or exist alongside characters from the book, movie, or game, playing through well-trodden plots as alternative characters, or expanding upon the setting and story outside of its established canon. What is fanon? Though it is distinct from canon, fanon is an interrelated concept in that the term encompasses invented, non-canon, or non-verified as being canon facts or situations, especially those which are so frequent in fan fiction they may become seen as an extended part of the original canon. They become memnic within the fanon as many writers and fans adopt the same fanon, often within a relatively short time frame. One of the usual purposes of fanon is to fill in perceived contradictions or gaps in the canon by answering or asking questions that the source material will not or cannot address, or simply hasn't addressed before. Prime examples including the first names Uhura and Sulu in Star Trek, or the belief that the acronym NCC means something, which were fanon long before official adoption. Fanon is not using the fiction to justify concepts that are not plausible within the established canon. A little about Korean roleplay. I've been involved in gore, both lifestyle communities and roleplay communities, since 2003. I started in gore in IRC and HTML chat rooms, in AOL, and Ultima Online. After taking a 2-year break, I have returned to find a huge growth in the role-playing skills of the Korean community. 2 years ago, these classes were started to help raise the bar. Today, they are here to help new players reach that same bar. Gore offers an incredible opportunity to develop rich and wonderful roleplay that makes you want to log in day after day, that makes you laugh and cry, and to become immersed in the very lives of your characters. What we are going to be exploring in this series of classes is how to maximize your roleplay in Second Life Gore and give you the knowledge and foundation skills common to many other roleplay venues. Not a game you can win. Role-playing is not a game with winners and losers. As a matter of fact, role-playing itself isn't a game at all. It's shared storytelling. There are those who enter into role-play with purely self-centered motivations. We've all come across someone like this. The person who completely hogs the scene and doesn't acknowledge anyone else's contribution to roleplay. There is also the person who demands you accept the roleplay according to his conception because of some obscure rule and doesn't care if you, the player, like it or hate it. This is the person who thinks he's always the best and most perfect at everything and believes he has the only right interpretation. Always does it right, never loses, no matter what. This person, who is likely playing a total asshole character and acts just as much like an asshole in instant message, this person refuses to accept anyone else's roleplay unless it fits into his or her perfect and the only correct view of Gore. And the new phenomenon, players who have such strict roleplay limits, their limits are no longer plausible in a Gorean context. Roleplayers have terms for people like this: God Motor, Power Role Player, Superman, Attention Whore, Drama Queen, Nazi Role Player, etc. We will discuss these terms and the meanings in the next class. Sometimes these types of player in Gore like to dress it up or justify their roleplay with characterizations like Hardcore Gorean, True Gorean, and my favorite, Gore is a harsh world. But truthfully, other roleplay participants know it for what it is: bad roleplay. Now, before some of you start thinking about all those people you know who you think are guilty of this, and making promises to yourself not to roleplay with them, I'd like to point out that in my experience, those who complain the most about people like this are often as guilty as those they criticize. So where does that leave us? Is this the kind of thing we don't like and we don't want in our roleplay? What's the alternative? In a word, the answer is respect. Respect for other roleplayers, respect for each other's roleplay. Respect is the name of the game. Role-playing is a team sport, though it's not really a sport either. From this point on in the coming classes, we are going to be talking a lot about respect between role players. How to earn respect, how to give respect, how to foster respect. When a community of role players respects each other, the quality of roleplay soars, and everyone is motivated, excited, and involved. Acting, not writing. Roleplay is not about writing or composing the best, most interesting post. It's about acting your role in a way that others can really see it. Too many people are told they need to write better to be a good role player, and that is often overwhelming. But we are not writing a story. We are acting with our characters in the story. It is much easier to act than it is to write. While I will be encouraging you to develop your character separately from yourself in the coming weeks, in the end, every character has aspect of ourselves, and every role player starts off playing themselves to one degree or another. It's very easy to play yourself. What makes the difference between a mediocre role player and a good role player is the ability to show that role, to live it. Let me give you an example. In real life, when you say hello to someone, do you sit there with no body movements or facial expressions? Does the hello come out of your mouth like you're a mannequin? No, it does not. When we say hello to someone, we turn our heads, we inflect our voices, our lips curving into smiles or sneers, our eyes looking to the person we are greeting. The very first lesson you can learn is to demonstrate your physical actions. This is called emoting. Take a simple look at your own body movements and actions when you do things. When you do the dishes, when you get dressed, when you hunt for your lost keys, when you eat or laugh, and save those physical actions in your head for your role play. If you can learn to show others your character, you will have begun the first step towards good role play. Stop and read your own posts. Look at what they have communicated and ask yourself, how could I have demonstrated more about my character? Here's an example. Branwen the crone sits at her computer, her hands moving over the keyboard quickly. She learned to type professionally with each finger in its proper place. She reads back what she is typing and checks to see if anyone else had said something she needed to respond to. Soon she'll finish what she is saying and sit back in the chair, perhaps shifting her position from one leg to another to relieve the pressure on her arthritic hips, and sigh quietly. It had been a long morning already, and the list of things to get done was already mounting up as her IMs began to flash golden yellow. Know your fiction. Part of being a good role player is knowing the fiction. Those who say to me, "Oh, I just want to role play, I don't want to read the books or learn the fiction," do not care about the collective enjoyment of the others around them. They simply wish to do what they wish to do, with no care for the fact that the rest of us are trying to play this fiction. Knowing your fiction is the first step in being respectful. It is important to know your fiction, not so that you can be the perfect Korean, but so that you can maintain the suspension of disbelief that is important in the creation of a fictional world. Every one of us has some book, movie series, or fictional world that we like a lot, one that has moved us and which we have fond memories of. For some, that fiction is gore. For others, it may be Star Trek. Think about that fiction you like the most, and imagine something completely out of line in the fiction, like maybe a Klingon in the Star Wars story. When we are involved in a fictional world we love, it can be disheartening to role play with others who are introducing things that have no part of this world. It ruins our suspension of disbelief. It ruins the immersion that role players crave. Oh, I know, some of you are thinking that being completely by the book is boring. Having to be perfect without introducing our own creative variations isn't any fun. And I agree with you. But when we know our fiction, when we know what is and isn't plausible or fitting to the fiction, we can make better informed choices that are both believable and creative. So it's important to learn the fiction in the world in which you are playing. That's not to say we must then adhere to it as if it was scripture, but rather by knowing the fiction, we can make informed choices about our characters and storylines. It is also important to be willing and able to explain your fiction and its plausible application so that those role-playing with your story can do the same. This was a question that was asked of me when I first started the class, and it's a great question. Knowing the fiction, I totally understand. But what do you believe is the acceptable amount of knowledge, especially for those who might not be strong readers? Where do you draw the line in the sand? My answer is, there is no line. You can never really know enough. Even if you memorize all of the 30-plus books suffering through some of the worst writing in science fiction history, it's not enough, because you then have to learn about Earth history. There is never a point where anyone knows enough, but that's not relevant. What is relevant is what relates to your character. Does what I'm doing with my character fit the fiction? I don't give a damn how the legal system in R works. I only need to know how it works in Torvald's land. And only because I'm a rune priest. If you do not know the fiction, then all you can do is be respectful enough not to roleplay that you do. Know what isn't your fiction. While it's great that role-player communities develop their own fanon, it is important to say to new players, there's a lot of bullshit out there. Some fanon is great, enriching, creative, and interesting, and we want to embrace and encourage this kind of fan fiction. However, there is equally a lot of crazy non-canon, that is, rules not compatible with the fiction that is present in the SL Korean community. Furthermore, these little tidbits of invalid crap are often slammed down the throat of new players for no good reason other than arrogance and ignorance apparently like company. No matter how strongly someone tells you something is true to the fiction, including me, or how insistent they are that you need to modify your roleplay to conform to it, including me, in the end, you simply need to know your fiction and make respectful choices. A good line in the sand is this, to ask yourself, does this edition add to the fiction and make the roleplay better, more interesting, cooler? Is this edition cool to more than just myself? Or is it just another stupid rule that doesn't do anything other than add another rule or inflate my own ego? Don't propagate ignorance, and don't dismiss plausible creativity. About gore. I am not a proponent of Gore Evolved, and yet I'm also not a fan of the by the book as it exists in SL Gore. Gore Evolved is too far away from the books and the fiction that I enjoy, and rigid by the book often, as it's played, is about as interesting as having my teeth cleaned by the dentist every day. I do play more relaxed by the book because to do anything else is Gore Evolved, or worse, idiotic. If we're not playing gore based on the books by John Norman, we're simply not role-playing the Korean fiction. Gore is a series of books, and we role-play by them. If you're not going to role-play compatibly with the books, why even call it gore in the first place? However, if we are going to role-play instead of recreate, we assume that we are going to tell our own stories and have our own characters. The minute we are not Forkbeard, Tarl, or Pudding, we are role-playing. And role-play means being part of a shared story, a story we together create in the fictional world of Gore, actors in a play without a set script. I understand and respect the choices people have made to play by the book or to play GE, but to me, neither of them is actually role-playing in Gore. I'm a role player. I'm a Korean role player, and that means I want my cake and to eat it too. I want my creativity, and I want my story, and I want it in the world of Gore. New players. I'm assuming some of you are here today are not new to roleplay or new to Gore, and I want to thank you for coming. I also have a plea for both new players and old players. Have patience. Have patience with new players and those who don't type as fast as you, with those whose native language is not English. Be generous. Do not be the person who picks the unpopular kid last. Give new players the same respect you give everyone else. None of us were all that when we started. Don't be a roleplay snob. New players, be patient with yourselves. You are not going to know everything and are not expected to. You will learn. Have patience with older players who may not realize immediately that you are new. When you don't understand something, ask. Try not to do so in the middle of the roleplay. However, ask an IM for assistance or clarification. It's also a very good idea to let others know in your profile that you are new to Gore or new to role-playing, and ask them to help you privately and respectfully in instant message. In closing, the class is now ending, and we will continue next week with How Not to Be a Noob. I will be taking questions for the rest of the hour, but want to leave you with a summary of things to think about. Role-playing is far more like acting than writing. Expressing yourself through emotes is the first big step in role-playing. Respect between role players is the most important thing to learn. It's important to know the fiction of the world you are sharing with others, and practice patience. Your homework for next week is to submit a note card with 5 different emotes of your physical actions, and I will now be taking questions.